Hi, this is Ted. In my last video, I talked about don't touch the prophets. Okay. Well, they've really taken this to an interesting extreme. I need to move on and say a little bit more about this. Real quick summary, the verses they use, there's two verses, one in 1 Chronicles, one in Psalm 105. And both verses they take out of context. They don't even realize there's a context to it. They don't know that David, who wrote the psalm and gave it to Asaph, that he was referring to Abraham and Isaac, who God told the king of Jour, well, at least in Abraham's case, this is a prophet and he will pray for you. And I explained to you how all that took place. So when David was talking about don't touch the prophets and the anointed, he's talking about those too. Now the anointing pretty much up until David's time belonged mostly to priests. I believe other nations may have already been anointing kings, and it was a physical anointment that took place. Now David used it as a metaphor for Abraham and Isaac. And because he uses it as a metaphor, I'm going to take it one step further and say maybe behind that metaphor, he really was talking about kings and priests. Prophets, I should say, kings and prophets. Don't touch the Lord's anointed. They were all anointed physically with oil, and now metaphorically, they're anointed. King Cyrus was considered to be anointed. In the New Testament, Jesus was anointed metaphorically in 4 different verses, anointed to serve. The saints are anointed through Christ, anointed to serve. And that's found in 1 Corinthians, where is that? 2 Corinthians 1:21. To take this anointing further, we see King David in a cave hiding from Saul, who's trying to kill him. And he has the opportunity when Saul goes to relieve himself in the same cave, not realizing David is very close to him. David is given permission by his general to go kill King Saul. After all, it's self-protection. Nobody's going to blame him. But David says, I shall not touch the Lord's anointed. And when news came back that King Saul was killed, the person who brought it and who rejoiced and thought, hey, David, he basically killed King Saul because Saul was already dying. And he made sure he would die. And he told David that, and David said, well, you killed the Lord's anointed. And he had that guy killed. All right, so there is kind of a precedence for don't touch the Lord's anointed in that respect. But I'm going to take this a little different direction than your prophets would take it. When I answer anybody online who says you should not touch the Lord's anointed, I usually say I don't. Or I usually say something to the effect of, I would never speak out against the Lord's anointed. Now, implied in that is a lot. Implied in that is I do not consider them anointed, just the way that some of them do not consider our president the anointed. But in reality, the president who is physically there is the one God has chosen, or else God has lost all his power and he has allowed Satan to take over. No, not allowed, but it's been taken from him, because the prophets have said President Trump would be president during this time, but it's never happened. So either the prophets are wrong or God has no power to be able to control this kind of stuff. So God gives them a message and then, sorry guys, I did my best. All right, you get the point where I'm going. So I do not consider these people anointed, and never will. Now, when the prophets say this, when they say you should not touch the Lord's anointed, number one, they might be speaking of and through coercive power. What is coercive power? Coercive power is you work your job or you get fired. That's coercive power. Coercive power is you be nice or Santa won't give you presents. That's coercive power. It's also a bluff. When I play poker, I generally don't, but I have. And when you play poker, and I'm terrible at this, you want to turn it into a game of bluffing. In other words, I bluff everybody. I try to convince them I have a hand. I really don't. But a lot of this takes looking at people, studying their reactions, the way they play, how they play. They're a lot about their psychological makeup. What's working? What kind of hands do they fold on? There's so much learning in real poker. I don't care to get into. But the bluff is, I have a pair of twos, and I'm going to try to convince the person I'm playing with that I have a full house, which means maybe 2 twos and 3 kings. And somehow I need to convey through my manners and through everything that I can, maybe little slight comments I have. I don't know if I'm allowed to say comments, though, but let them know that I have a very powerful hand, and I'm bluffing them. And there's a lot of bluffing going on with these prophets because they are empty. They do not have the doctorates they say they have. They do not have the titles they say they have. They don't deserve them. The following, they exaggerate their following. They exaggerate the miracles that they perform. All these things, there's such a disconnect from who they are and what they present to their people. And in this, it's a bluff. Finally, and this was brought up by one of my one of the comments I got in my video this morning, that people, these prophets, like to keep you from thinking. And this is very true. It's like the cult leader who threatens his people not to go outside the circle. Don't trust the media. That's a big one right now. The media is so bad. Well, the media got it right when it came down to Trump versus Biden. The media got it right. But no, I'm not supposed to trust. I'm supposed to trust a prophet who says that Biden is not going to win. Huh? Something's wrong there. The media was more accurate than the prophets. So does that add up? Now, finally, how do we deal with people who are in it? How do you respond to them? As I mentioned, if I'm commenting online, I generally just say, no, I would never speak against one anointed by God. I would never speak against a real prophet. Stuff like that, because you are saying that, number one, you're in agreement with them to a point. Because you do need, you're not going to be able to do this much online, but if you're with a friend who is into this and warning you, this can actually be helpful. Find something that you both agree with, and I think both of us would agree, you don't want to be attacking one who is anointed, really somebody that God has blessed, somebody that God has chosen, somebody who's really doing God's work. You don't want to criticize, be overcritical, and start attacking them. So find that commonality. Then begin to differentiate and say, I do not believe this person is right because, and name a few things. Don't try to blow the person down and tear them apart, show them how they're wrong, because all you're going to do is push them deeper into their own thinking. They're going to see you as one who is used by the devil, one who has been deceived. They already believe that. So you need to find that common ground and help them gently, patiently, because a lot of these people aren't going to be changed overnight. Most people aren't, but it takes a while. And what you're doing is planting kind of a seed. Okay, but have you thought of this? Have you thought of the fact that they have been wrong? Were there other times they were wrong? When they give you a generalization, why do you think it's specific? And you can say things like that and bring them along gently. And if you find them digging in, back off a little bit. Doesn't hurt. And I think what you need to do there, just trust God to take care of them. So in conclusion, I would say, hold your ground. Say something like, I would never speak out against the Lord's anointed. Don't argue. Find common ground. And be patient. And being patient implies that you are just going to trust God to help take care of this. This is Ted. You have a good day.